I found in life that people can often be defined, or at least some definition can be found in that person, by the things that they like. But more than just liking something, it feels often something reaches deep inside. Even when it's something that predates our own existence, we find ourselves drawn. It's almost as if it calls to us from another life. Let's take a look across music, gaming, and the early coding, when we can find layers to unassuming people that may help define our own fascination with retro nostalgia.
Well, hold on. Okay, so I don't need to do that thing where I say, oh, fuck, damn, and then, oh wait, can I say that? Vinyl records as a format of music, to me, it represents a way of consuming the music in a timely and thoughtful manner, similar to the creation and recording of that music. And I find that to be important. It feels less disposable, obviously, with streaming nowadays, which, don't get me wrong, I absolutely take part in. You can't always listen to a record, but even when I would first get into records was the age of CDs. It just felt like a stronger, more tangible product to consume and to hold, possibly just due to the connotation of records being old and getting records, handed down and that, but it just feels like a tangible, solid object, like a literal record of this music being created. Part of that could be the difficulty of skipping a track, of having to manually find that on the album and drop the needle on it. Otherwise than that, you're listening to the album straight through, which could be argued as how music is intended to be listened to, like an album in its entirety, and not so much of this like shuffling or random playlist kind of mentality of picking songs here or there. I mean, although the kind of start of popular music and records was the singles and jukeboxes, so that's that does have its place. Let's go way back. When I was a very small kid in the late 80s, early 90s, my parents had the old, Sony hi-fi stack, and I believe it was already not working at the time. Like they needed a needle, and this was when it was harder to come across needles, and unfortunately, I like to drive my Hot Wheels cars around on the turntable, and I think I kind of contributed a little bit more to that going away. And so then we never had a record player after that, and there was always just something that struck me about it. So I would say maybe about the year 2000 or 2001, I decided to kind of get back into it. I was noticing a lot of the stuff I was listening to at the time, a lot of the punk that time was still being released on record. It's something just grabbed me, and I was like, I want to pursue this and just kind of get into it. The one necessity for playing records and to not damage them is to have a counterbalanced turntable with a weight so that you're not damaging the records, is my understanding. But other than that, I myself actually have a pretty amateur setup for how long I've been listening and collecting records for. I'm sure the fine people on the internet comments will be very gentle and not judgmental of that setup whatsoever, as understanding as internet users are known to be. So
what
that'd
you told
be
me
fun.
Earlier, why is your setup more amateur? So what was more important to you, finding the good vinyl, right?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Every time I come across nice vintage or analog equipment, I always consider it. It's like you can always find another turntable down the road, or you could spend that money on a record that, probably will be extremely hard to find. So I just keep dumping money and energy into the quote unquote software of the records themselves instead of upgrading the hardware. And my, 1997 3-disc changer as an amp still gets the job done. So we'll make the leap one of these days and see how it's actually supposed to sound.
Now, I briefly showed you the phono cut thing too. You think something like that's a good idea? Maybe haven't been able to find something that you could bring into the house and kind of cut your own records with, or does that take away from the vintage feel of all the original records that you come across, which you have a pretty large collection of?
No, I think that's a fantastic idea. I think that's a kind of perfect combination, bringing this format into a more reproducible modern age. And, you know, I'm sure the quality won't be, you know, as good as a professionally pressed record, but, you know, there's already levels of that with, my understanding, modern music is still mastered in a digital sense and not mastered for record. So, you know, the true audiophiles will, you know, say that that's already not up to quality. So if it can have something to bring records to more people or more easily, or have smaller artists more easily put out music in any format that they choose, I think that's great. I think people having access to easier things is only ever created more good things and more content for the world, and that's for the better. Listening to a record as opposed to any other, you know, probably digital format has its inherent differences, and you know, whether that's something that will be noticeable on a mint condition copy on a perfect setup, or is solely an imperfection that's there because of the journey that that specific record has been on. You know, as long as it's listenable and not something that totally skips, I definitely don't think that takes away from the experience. I think that it adds something to it. It adds the feeling of being in the room, and you know why people love live performances or live recordings so much is the subtle differences. And if you kind of have that same sense flowing through the record, then that's just one more connection to that piece of music. Somehow my brain can understand that, oh, a computer can just play an MP3 and that's how that works, but a record, although I obviously understand the needle and the amplification and all that, I still don't really understand what it is. It's very complex in its simplicity, I suppose, in that it's a kind of a solid capture of that actual sound wave cut into a piece of plastic is really weird to think about. And you know, kind of getting other technology, such as, you know, like you mentioned, tube amps and things to match that, just kind of seems in the spirit of playing this essential noise through these old, antiquated means, and I think that's really cool. Music is something in day-to-day life. I would say it's a little bit of both with records. It's the actual listening to the music. You know, there's definitely something to be said for having the collection, especially when you get into some unique things of yeah, you know, we can all have these songs on our computer, but to have you know, perhaps there's like a poster or a fold-out or a lyric sheet or something that came within the actual record that's not reproducible, or you know, like a colored variant of an album. It just adds something, and you know, everyone collects something, and it's kind of cool to have something that does look good and is interesting as a piece of art, but that also serves its original function of listening to it and enjoying it for what that is as well. My first record player, aside from the one in my family's house, was one of those old portable flip-out turntables with the stackable disc changer that would drop the records onto one another, and it sounded like crap, but it, you know, got me started. I'm sure it might have damaged some records along the way, but hey, you know, get a record player with a weight so that you're not damaging anything, is my understanding. But aside from that, just get what you can afford. You don't need to go all out. For people, especially younger people starting out, just get what you can afford. Just go for it, and don't buy stuff just because people think it's cool or what everyone else has. Just collect what you want to listen to. And yet he bought the bootleg, knowing it was a bootleg. This has a funny story. I don't remember it specifically. This was given to me, I believe my buddy Jesse gave me this. He may or may not have taken it from Matt's basement on Thanksgiving about 10 years ago when Matt left us down there. I don't know. Oops.
See the Wesley Willis album? No. Do you really?
Let's see. Here we go.
You've got one.
Wesley Willis Greatest Hits on vinyl. Let's see what we got. Track 1 is Rock and Roll McDonald's. Let's see, we got, we do have Easy E. And then, yeah, I Whipped Batman's Ass is on there, so, okay.
How was that not your first pick right there of your favorite album?
My name's Matt Nichols. As you can tell from the space you're seeing, I love video games. Mostly retro games, but I do play some new stuff here and there. But as you can tell, video games is a passion of mine outside of my day job. What does retro nostalgia mean to me? Everything. I mean, I grew up with it. I started playing when I was young. It's an escape. I wasn't real popular, so I come home and I had the games, and they couldn't talk back to me. So it's just something I can do and enjoy and like wind down when I had a rough day at the office or wherever, school, whatever it was at the time. Certain ones, yes, I'll play a lot more than others. It also depends. If I don't play the physical console, I might do an emulation because I'm either lazy to get the card out and try all that stuff. But on about a weekly basis, I'm playing something. If it's not like right now, I'm playing an older game, but it's been re-released on the Switch, so I'll play it on that console. But once a week, I'm playing something. Yeah.
Do you prefer to revisit these older consoles and games more, or
yes.
do you prefer? Well,
sorry. Yeah, I play some new things here and there. My brother, I'll get into what he's doing. But the retro is just, I don't know. It's the new is just, there's all this stuff you got to do to complete a game, and it takes forever. I can go back and play Super Mario Brothers and beat it in a day, and it's just the fun of just how simplistic the games were and how fun they were compared to some of this stuff where you have all this other stuff you got to do around it. It's just, I like the fun of the old games, revisiting them from my childhood. The Nintendo Entertainment System, the first Nintendo to come out in America, at least in 1985. It was the first major console I got. I had like hand-me-downs from relatives before that, but that was the first that was really my own. And Super Mario Brothers changed video games in general, and it made me love video games for what they are. And that's just an easy one for people to get into to show them, they're a good starting point. So it's not too old, and they're not like crazy about the older graphics. It's a good mix of like stuff.
So you're a fan of the Atari 2600 though, right?
Oh yeah, I have one over there, yes.
And have you beat E.T.?
No. I have a...
Has anybody beat E.T.?
Yeah, it's easy to beat.
Oh, are you sure?
Yes.
Now here it's a lot like the movie in the sense that the old lady throws you into a closet when you do something bad, and that there's a bunch of holes you fall into.
There's no old lady in no closet.
What?
No.
Well, that's totally what the game's about.
No, it's not.
Yeah, there's a bunch of holes, right?
There's a bunch.
You gotta fall into holes.
No, there's not a bunch of holes. You try to get rid of them. It's different. There is a modded version of the game where they fixed all the issues.
Now this game was made in 3 days or something like that?
No, 6 weeks. They gave Howard Scott Warshaw, Spielberg came to him and said, you got 6 weeks. So I want the game. The movie came out in June. He wanted the game out by December or a little before that so he could start shipping. And normally, 6 months to a year to plan and create a game. They gave him 6 weeks. And it's not the worst game ever. There are games that are even worse to play that are just got off on any system. That one's just got the rap for it. Same with the Pac-Man game that came out at the exact same time.
So what you're saying is you highly recommend E.T. as the best game on the 2600?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Well, Pac-Man was a pizza. The guy ate a slice out of a pizza, and it was called Puck-Man in Japan, and they wouldn't release it here in America under that name because people were afraid they'd change the P to an F. So, because you know how Americans are dirty, so they got Pac-Man over here. I played it in multiple places. They have a bunch of those machines out at those places. It's pretty fun. I was never really good at Pac-Man. I was more of a Miss Pac-Man, but it's still cool to try that on that control stick,
Did you ever get that old Mac fired up?
It works. Only thing, like I said, the Wii and my Atari 800 XL does not work right now because I took it apart. The rest of my consoles I can fire up.
Are you going to give us a little bit of a rundown about fixing that Mac? Did you send it off to get fixed? Or did you...
I got it recapped, the capacitors. I don't know how to do that too well, but most of the other stuff I ordered parts for and I watched videos online. I don't know what kind of thing they use for those, but I mean, hey, I do know that the current game that just came out for the Switch, the Mario 64, Sunshine and Galaxy, were just ROMs. They didn't rebuild them from the emulation up to the ground up for like 720p. So that's kind of annoying that they didn't take the time with those. But those were the same. But yeah, I mean, for somebody like, let's say, not us, who had that stuff when they were a child and played it, but it wasn't like their livelihood like it is for me or you. And they got kids now, and they're like, oh, I want to show you what we had. Instead of going to eBay or a shop, finding the system itself, all the hookups, and then finding all those games, all 30 of them that are on that console, that can run you $500 or more. Then you pay about $100 for that console, and then you can show your kids exactly what you have without breaking the bank, and also finding a way to hook it up to a modern TV. So yeah, it's good if you're not a hardcore gamer and you don't care about having the physical carts, and you can just have those 30 games on that little system like that. Is perfect for people. Same with the Ataris that came out like that. It's easy to go to the store and get a flashback with those 90 games on it that you can show people instead of having to find a console and those 90 carts and all that stuff.
And it definitely means more to you to have that
it does
to the past. It is something about the attachment to the
right.
The original systems that make it more enjoyable.
Yes, I don't own any of those. If somebody gave me one, I'd take it, but I would never use it because I can just go as easy, pull the card out and play it. It's just, that's what I like to do. But they are nice and they're cool. They're official consoles, so I really think that it's a good idea. It helps make the company money and keep those things relevant for people that aren't really out there looking for the physical, the real thing. Which most of these you'll find are modded. Atari 2600. Down there's a 5200, 7800. It is HDMI modded. That's an Atari 800 XL computer. That is the Famicom. Famicom in Japan, it came out in 1983. And that is the redesigned Famicom that came out in 1993. That is the all-in-one Famicom and disk system, the Famicom Duo. The Intellivision right there. And next to it's the ColecoVision. There's a TurboGrafx 16, Sega Saturn there. Next to it's the GameCube. And you've got the original NES, which is modded. And then above it is my go-to. This is one of those newer systems they make. So when I want to like capture games or play them in the best quality, I use that. Redesigned Super NES that came out in 1993. This is Sega Master System, but it's the Japanese model, not the American model. So it does multiple consoles, so I don't have to have 5 different consoles set up, I have one. Super Famicom, the Japanese N64, PlayStation 2, and the Xbox. This is another Pong console. I don't know much about it. It was given to me. Back there's a Switch, and then you can see the Wii, which isn't working at the moment, and the Wii U. A bunch of handhelds are over that way. Here's the Virtual Boy. Take off the little cover. I have a dust cover for it. Hey, how you doing? This is Rob the Robot. The original robot that came with the NES. Little tidbit, they asked Atari to sell their system because they were more well known. Atari said no, so they had to build a robot and they had the gun with it just so it would sell better because people thought video games were a fad. For the 2 games, he had 2 games only. Here's my Game Gear real quick. It is modded, it's got TV out. I can put it with an HDMI adapter into here, and also I put an adapter into here and I have a controller. There's some, you see the Game Boys laying around the floor. I've got plenty of handhelds and stuff. I ordered a handheld recently online. It's going to play almost every system I got, hook up to my TV, and it's going to be much nicer. Here's my NES collection. Just like the Virtual Boy, I'm short about 20 games. The last one I got was a game called Snow Brothers, and it was like, in the hundreds of dollars range. Okay, I got that game. I got this recently. I can't wait to try it out. It's probably going to be really good. I hope there's a lot of levels on it.
You didn't read the label on the back, I take it.
Not yet. I want to know that, but over here you've got some Super Nintendo games mixed in with the Sega, and then the Sega CD, Sega Saturn, 32X games down there, more than 64 in there, and then some of the, you got the Aladdin deck games. This is one of the most rarest games on the console, so it was never sold, and if you find it, the label's usually torn, and getting in a box is near impossible because they just throw them away or they're hard to get. Sega Master System, some of them are European games because some of them, the American versions, are a lot more expensive. Game Boy games for the Sega SG-1000, which was the predecessor to the Master System. It was Sega's first home console, and it looks like the ColecoVision. They're pretty much the same kind of graphics. And also, those games were also My Card games. You had little credit card games similar to the TurboGrafx 16. And then there's some more Game Boy games on there with the Game Gear, the retro stuff. As you can tell from the mess, I'm out of room. I gotta make more room but that's all 2600 games. The Intellivision, Coleco, the weird colored carts. That was the Famicom. They didn't have a strict regiment on the color of the carts, like the NES was all gray. So yeah, these are different colors because they didn't care like the NES in America. Here's a fun one. This is a Super Mario Bros. 2 that we got, but they never got it, so they called it USA when they got it. This is the actual, this is it. This is the original. And it was some like kind of Arab, kind of like Middle Eastern thing. And then when Mario 2 came out, they said, well, it's gonna be too hard for us and it's too much like the original, so they didn't want to release it. So they took this game, which they owned, and put Mario characters on it, and we got this. Laser discs down here.
Laser disc?
Some of these are. Some of these right here are laser discs. The rest of them are vinyl. Laser disc, the Ramones. Like, I've never watched it, but it's like a ton of discs and special features. I have the definitive truth. This is the best version of Star Wars right here. It's got a collector's book and everything else in it. And it's the definitive set for it, so it's got the best image quality of the original, not modded or what, a special edition trilogy. So Game Gear, Game Boy Advanced. Some of these are Sega SG-1000 games. Some of them are Sega Master System games. These are TurboGrafx and more of the Game Gear. All right, this is the Apple IIe. So this has a little HDMI board inside. I'm not gonna show you, but I hook it up HDMI to my TV and it looks flawless instead of the original way. The Macintosh Plus, I recently had it recapped and the board's recapped. And I tried to recap the hard drive stuff in here, but I never use the hard drive anymore, but 20 megabyte hard drive. It holds the operating system and all the programs. There was no cooling for this originally, so this system can get really hot, so this came with it. I did retro bright everything. If you out there in the world know retro brighting, all the plastics back in the day were awful and they yellowed. So I retro brighted all this to make it look as original as possible so it wasn't so dark and yellow. And I retro brighted all this, and it works well. I mean, I can play it and fire it up anytime I want. Thanks for checking it out. Glad you could see all of my amazing stuff that I have here that I've collected over the years. And if you get a chance, just play something retro. I mean, whether it be downloading it on your phone or going out and getting one of those emulated clone consoles, check it out. Maybe you'll like it, or you can pass it down to somebody else, or give it to somebody that might appreciate it more than you will. I'm glad you could come by. Now get the fuck out.
Well, my name's Mark Finninger. You want to know about my career that I got now, or what I got before that?
What you did a long time ago.
What I did a long time ago. Yeah, what I do now is top secret, but no, computers have always been something I love, and I used to own a computer business back in the 90s. We built computers from scratch. I guess you would say we were in competition with Dell. Dell was a lot bigger. And then Gateway 2000 was a big thing back then. The cool thing about it was I had a dream about being like Dell, and I seen it. But Dell got started in the 80s, and I got started in the mid-90s. We had 17 employees at one time, and we were in the process of looking at hiring. We were going to meet the 50 mark, employee-wise, and so which meant we were really going to have to change some things on the way we operated. Before we were just 17, it was easy to control things. You can keep kind of micromanage it, but when you get 50 employees, you can't do that anymore. The first how I even got involved in computers would be, I had a pretty rough childhood. I was in foster care, moved around a lot, and so I was in a store. I still remember I was in a store and I seen a console, and this was late 70s, and it was one of those Pong games. And I remember seeing that, and I made my mind up that I was gonna buy that game. I didn't know what it was, I just knew it hooked to a TV, and you could do something with these little stick things. So I worked all summer long, cutting grass and doing just odd and end things, and I was able to buy that. And when I bought that game, I wanted to know what made it work. How did this work? How was I able to move a controller that made a thing go up and down to hit a ball and knocked it over to the other side? And you could easily watch that it was random. And I was like, how's it random? Because I had all those little football games that they had that you could play on these little handheld things, but those weren't random. You could only go certain ways. And so they intrigued me into that. And so I was in a position where I couldn't really do anything for another 6 or 7 years. but I always thought about that. I always wanted to know what made that work. And so as I got older, I got adopted by a great family, and that gave me an opportunity to get into computers. Now what's really funny is when I wanted to buy this Commodore VIC-20 was my very first computer. I can remember my mom and dad thinking it was a bad thing. Why are you doing this? What's the purpose in this? Computers weren't a thing then. Commodore VIC-20, what's that? And I got it, and I remember it was just a keyboard, and that was the coolest thing. And you hooked it to your TV, and then you could buy these little magazines that would show you how to program. And like everybody, I programmed the repeat thing, and then I learned how to program games on it, and it was just intriguing to me that I could program a game to do something, but I still could not figure out how to make it random, and it drove me nuts. And then soon after that, went to the Commodore 64, which was leaps and bounds above the VIC-20. When you think about, or when I think about it, I think of the storage, knowing what I know now, how primitive we were. It was a cassette recorder with a tape, and that's what you recorded. I remember recording my games on it, saving my games to this cassette recorder, and so I'd have them. So I had a stack of tapes.
Kind of like old hard drives, using them in that.
Right, you would, yeah, you would like.
Were they playable off the tapes?
Yeah, they would make some weird noise or something, but yeah, I don't remember ever.
How many could you play the game off the tape?
No, yeah. So you could, some of them you could. It depends on the game. Some of them were very, very load. It'd take forever. In today's time, it was, wow, it was a long time. And then, Amiga come out with a computer then, and I vaguely had some involvement with the Amiga computer, which I still think today was probably one of the better computers ever made. I cannot remember what it was just called, the Amiga. Had the best graphics back then. That was cool.
So when did you stop coding? Did it get to a point where it was overwhelmingly different from what you got used to with coding on the Commodore?
Yeah, when I transferred, it's probably in the late 80s, the coding thing, life, you start doing things, you get more involved in things, and coding is very time consuming. I had nobody else that was, you were a rarity if you did coding, and so you didn't really have nobody else to talk to or understand. You'd buy magazines or books. Some of it made sense. I went to college for a little bit, and I learned real quick, the professors, they were not into what I was into. They were more into business aspect of the coding part of it, which was not my thing. And about that time, the graphics started changing, and so it started getting overwhelming, and I just couldn't keep up with it.
Feel like you got left behind with the changes, kind of thing?
Yeah, it was for the coding part.
So would you say, I guess yes to this, but would you say, in your own way, that coding back then, there was just something more familiar and homey to it than there is now? It's a lot more complicated versus the more basic fun of the older systems to code or older ways to code, because a lot of us don't really understand that. I've never really done coding,
right?
So
I do coding now. I mean, like my wife could hear me cussing last night when I was coding something, and she told me to calm down and be patient, because it's so aggravating now that you spend hours to do.
Was it the restless leg syndrome?
Yes, it was the one I was talking about. Yeah, and so back then it was simpler. It was more rewarding. It's rewarding today, but the problem is you spend 10 hours to get something to move across a field, and the reward it takes a team now. Back in the day, it was just you could do it by yourself. You could make a game by yourself back then. Today, you just can't do it.
Do you feel that some of the romanticism behind being able to code on those old consoles is just gone?
Oh yeah, they're not going to do it by themselves. It's not your idea. The unfortunate part is you can have your idea today. You're not going to be the one to create it.
Yeah.
If you want your idea, you're going to be you're going to be a director of it.
So you've got younger people watching and probably never seen that or know what that is. Right. Will you show them and tell them that? And for the older folks that I know that do watch this, that are interested in the technique you used to do in order to double your storage on it.
This is a floppy disk, which really tells you my age, because I can remember they were big. There were some bigger than this. You do realize that, right? They made the first floppy disk was bigger than this. Yeah. So, and it was by IBM that did it, but that's another story. So this is the floppy disk, and I think it held like 1 dot of what the stuff handles now. And so it went in like this, or as you're looking at the camera, down like this. So this notch here was also what you would use to copy protect it. So you put a piece of tape over to copy protect it. But if you wanted to make it a double-sided floppy, you would take and cut out a notch over on this side. And so you would have double the space doing like this. So when you bought a high-speed game from a gaming system, Sierra was one of the #1 gaming programmers back in the 80s.
They made Tribes, I think, if I recall.
Yeah, they all, King's Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, which my wife absolutely loves, and she still plays today. Matter of fact, she was playing it today. And Police Quest. That was my first game I ever got from them, was Police Quest, and it was a text-based game. But it would give you double space, and if you bought from a reputable company like that, sometimes you would get the program on both sides of your floppy disk, this big, which was cool. These things, and when you would stick it in, it would make so much noise. I mean, it was like it sounded like a typing machine or something when it would be doing it. And you would be so excited because it would come up. And you got to remember, graphics back then were 16 colors was the max amount of graphics you were going to get. And that was awesome. You would freak out about that because everything else before then was monogram or whatever, monochrome. It was really neat. And it reminds me of my first hard drive, you know, back in the day, that when you ordered your first hard drive, I got nervous and excited about it. I was like waiting on the UPS man to show up for my first hard drive, which was 10 megabytes. Not gigabyte, megabytes. 10 megabytes was my hard drive. And they had this little arm on the side of them that would turn on your hard drive. And your hard drive, 10 megabyte hard drive was like this big. And I probably paid $300 for that thing. And I was just so excited. Put my games on there, and you know they'd load up in about 5 minutes, and you didn't care. You'd wait. So that was back when, talking about programming, people didn't play games a lot when PCs back in the 90s because you didn't hit double click anything. There was no such thing as Windows back then. It was all DOS. And so to run something with sound, if you happen to have a sound card, which was another exciting time in my life, was you had to put the code in to get the game to work with the sound card when it first loaded it up. And if you put it in wrong, it wouldn't work.
Let's say a coder nowadays, would it be an experience for them to go back and try to code something like a Commodore 64 game if they went back and tried to code something like a Atari or an Amiga game? Would that be...
I think that would be a challenge. It would be a cool challenge because it's something they could accomplish by themselves. Again, like I was saying, it doesn't take 100 programmers to make one game. And they would have to learn a different language. That would be cool. I don't remember what the language was called back then. But that would be, I think for them, if they were up to it. Now, the problem is a lot of people nowadays are excited about graphics. That, you know, and you're not going to get that. It's got to be about the story when you do it. It's got to be about the gameplay. And so a lot of people have missed that here recently. What does the nostalgic past of retro tech mean to me? That old tan-looking Commodore 64 with the brown keys or black keys. I know they were weird looking. They weren't totally black. And that clicking noise they made, and that little. The exciting when you turn, you could smell I know as bad as it sounds, you could smell that computer, that electronic smell back then. And you got to realize back then that stuff just wasn't normal like it is today. And so that when you would sit down with it and you would see it, you would smell it, you would turn it on and you would hit the keyboard and you would hear the sound and you knew you were accomplishing something. To me, the game then was, the program was, it was all heartfelt. It was all, you put everything you had into it, or whatever game you were playing, somebody put everything they had into it. And it was just, to me, it took me into a happy place. It took me away from the chaos that was going on around me, and it gave me something that I could put my mind into and just black out everything else. So to me, that's what it is. It's that old keyboard with the clicking noise that today, it's funny, today people want that clicking noise, and that was normal back then. And then the smell of the computer itself. So, and
It just has a special place though. It never go away.
no, you never, and I can smell it right now. As crazy as it is.